for Junior D Tigers, they will have to play the classification game for a 5th place. They lost to Mali just a few moments ago by 81-70. That's 11 points game after going neck to neck from the first quarter to the fourth quarter, but it just wasn't to be for the D Tigers Junior, who happens to arrive in South Africa in Pretoria just a few hours before their opening game, which they lost, but they were able to get to the quarterfinals. But now they have to play classification game. Welcome to Sport Tonight. I'm Cecilia Mogbe in Lagos. Austin Okonakpa will join me any moment from now. But this is what the show looks like tonight. Of course, we'll be focusing on the D Tigers and the D Tigers, the under-18 Afro Basket Championship for the men and women that's currently taking place in South Africa in Pretoria. And of course, the Four Corners will be in action 2 a.m. tonight. Yes, they will be up against Japan, and the score that has been described as the AI squad, so to speak. They've scored 13 goals so far in the tournament. The Four Corners will up against them for a place in the quarterfinal. That's the round of 16 they will be playing. We'll also be talking about the National Youth Games. Yes, on the 15, the National Youth Games is for athletes below the age from under 15. The opening ceremony was held earlier today in Asaba, Delta State. To dwell on that, I mean, what the future holds for more than 4,000 athletes that are taking part in this year's edition. And of course, to touch down on development, Nasarawa State is actually doing a lot in terms of football. The Governor's Cup, after 13 years, is returning to the state. Yes, basketball getting our attention, football getting our attention, and the youth games development also getting our attention tonight. And joining me tonight in Lagos studio is Oludolapo Adewale.
I like how you call my name. Thank you so much, Cici. You know, sad one there for the Junior D Tigers, but, you know, something made me happy coming into the studio. I watched the video of Daniel Amokachi, Everton versus Tottenham of 1995, and it just brought smiles to my face when Daniel Amokachi subbed himself. That's according to what people said. And he went onto the pitch and he did something remarkable for his team back then too. It kind of brought back old school memories to me. Oh, sorry to the Tigers, Junior Tigers.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. All right, I mean, we'll start off with the National Youth Games, of course, in the Asaba, Delta State. They're hosting. The opening ceremony was colorful. The sports minister was there to declare it open. But joining us from Asaba in Delta State will be Harrison Ocholo, the chairman of Media and Publicity, the subcommittee for that. He will be joining us to tell us more about this. The Youth Games, what Delta State is trying to achieve in this particular edition. As I mentioned earlier, we have more than 4,000 athletes that are taking part in this year's edition. Of course, yesterday they had a screening. Screening was done for all the athletes competing, and that's because they do not want anyone above the age of 15, because it's all about, how do I put it now, giving them their dreams, and not just that, ensuring that there is no age cheat. So athletes must be 15 years of age and below. So any attempt at age cheat obviously will not be tolerated. That's why the screening was done. And the colorful opening ceremony that started the whole event. So I'll go to Asaba Delta State now, where Harrison Ocholo is joining us. Good evening, sir. It's good to have you join us on the program.
Yeah.
All right, I mean, the opening ceremony just took place this evening, and it was a colorful ceremony for Delta State. A lot of things were put in place to actually achieve this. The crowd that came on. Let's start off with how the screening was done to ensure that there's all the athletes competing, about 4,585 athletes competing within that age that had been stipulated for the National Youth Games.
Thank you very much. It's finally here, the 8th edition of the National Youth Games, and we put a lot of work into this day and night to ensure that the participating states get down comfortably well to settle down for sports in business. And of course, the local organizing committee, ably led by veteran sports administrator and former commissioner for sports in Delta, Chief Solomon Nogba, under his direction, and of course being ably supported strongly, tremendously by His Excellency the Governor of Delta State, Right Honorable Elder Sheriff Oborewori. Now, what we have done proactively with the support of the main organizing committee and the Federal Ministry of Sports Development was to ensure that we look back at the 7th edition and able to up our game and ensure that there were minimal lapses in terms of accommodation, massive improvement. We had to work on that in terms of transportation. And just to put the figures rightly, at the moment, we've got about 5,400 and something athletes already from the 35 states and the FCT, excluding Rivers. Okay. Rivers is not here in Asaba. So just to put the figures rightly, because we got that numbers after the DROF, the delegates registration meeting in Abuja, so that we know what we're planning for, how we're going to plan for that, how to go about it, and ensuring that these youngsters have a swell time in Asaba Delta State.
Yeah, there have been reports sometimes when Delta State are hosting some events, some athletes usually complain of accommodation and everything. This year, are we going to have something different for these athletes? I've seen pictures, of the organizing committee, the LOC actually visiting where the athletes will be staying. What are the plans for this?
Thank you very much, Cecilia. Excellent plans. We have 70% or more of the athletes staying at the Denis Osadebe University, which is one of the best facilities you'll find for any university students. The youngsters are staying there. We've got the Infant Jesus Academy, one of the most sought after private institutions in Asaba, and the students are staying there. So we've got a 1,000% improvement, I put it that way, in terms of accommodation. And the beautiful thing about it is that it's a short distance away from competition venue. But again, His Excellency the Governor has given us a marching orders to ensure that there's adequate. The beautiful thing about it is that when the directive was given, we had already made plans for transportation, even though most of these states came with their buses and all of that. Yes, that would help. But again, we don't leave anything to chance in ensuring that adequate transportation system is put in place to move from the Denis Osadebe University and other venues to the Stephen Kechi Stadium and other event venues like the Cenotaph, St. Patrick's, Western Mixed Secondary School, and all of that, just like you have within an Olympic ring. So make sure all of this is put in place. So there will be no questions this time around or agitations, because we've gone ahead to improve the system far better. And of course, we learned from events of the past to improve for the future. And that's what we've done so far.
Interesting to note that. I'm happy that the kids will be really happy about the accommodation. In terms of feeding and, of course, the event venue, we've seen pictures, of course, of some of them. How ready is it? How ready is Delta State? I know that the first event has already started. I mean, Esther Chijoke actually won 3 gold medals today in weightlifting for Team Edo.
Yes, the kids are excited. Now, let's talk about feeding. We didn't want to leave anything to chance. The kids will be fed rightly and excellently well. We had to engage nutritionists to ensure that the caterers had to go through strenuous process of qualifying to be caterers for the National Youth Games. And that was done because we believe that if the kids are to be fed, they should be fed well, right meal, morning, afternoon, and of course morning and evening, because competition, of course the afternoon as well. But we have to now organize it in such a way that even if the kids are at competition venues, that's why I spoke about transportation. So all of these logistical plans have been put in place to ensure that wherever they are, the kids are rightly fed well. Now, yes, medals started coming in, like you mentioned about Esther Chijoke, Team Edo winning gold. The stadium is a beehive of activities. As at the last 30 minutes, I left the stadium back home. The kids are having a swell time. So, His Excellency, the Governor of Delta State, Right Honorable Elder Sheriff Oboriwo, has not left anything to chance. I will not do so until the last day of competition, the last day of the National Youth Games. And we'll keep improving on the systems and processes as we get along. But again, this time around, much more better, much more improved.
All right. Before Austin will come in, I mean, what was the criteria used in screening these athletes? I mean, I know sometimes they say the passport is enough, or if they're from school, or said, what are the criteria that was used to screen athletes that are competing?
Yes, the main organizing committee, the MOC, responsible for that, and the Federal Ministry of Sports, the owners of the National Youth Games. We, as a local organizing committee, were in part of the screening process. Okay. So I would not want to speak to that, but I know that after 8 last night, screening processes were still on to ensure that the athletes go through that process to ensuring that the states, a large delegation, 5,000 plus, not a small number. Yeah. But again, I know that Federal Ministry of Sports and the main organizing committee must have had systems in place to ensure that the athletes at the right age are the ones competing in the 8th edition of the National Youth Games.
Austin, you ready for us?
Yes, party greetings to everyone joining us on the show. Mr. Harrison, good to have you on the program.
And I'm sure see you again.
When I hear about this sort of, event, the Youth Games is all about development. I must say well done to you and your team. But it's very, very important that we keep an eye on that age cheat issue, because that's a cankerworm to sports development in Nigeria. I think you've done a good job at talking about, how ready Delta State is to host the National Youth Games. But I want you to expand on the objective. What's the core objective for Delta State that is in line with that of the Federal Ministry of Sports?
Thank you very much. The vision is simple. The vision of His Excellency, the Governor of Delta State, Right Honorable Edashari Oburiwori, the vision has consistently been that we should use the hosting of national, subcontinental, and continental competitions to build a legacy of talent discovery, talent nurturing, and talent development to elite level. So that has been the consistent plan from day one, right from the Ibori administration down to Ibua administration, the Okowa administration, until now to the Oboriwori administration. So nothing has changed. It's a developmental process. Now, in line with the vision of the federal government vis-a-vis the Federal Ministry of Sports Development, it's the synergy is just there. So what you just need to key into is that what we do back home here is community-based sports development. Now, that can it's a simple tool to just like further have what you call a national discourse, a conversation on how we can use grassroots sports development to build national cohesion, national unity. So Delta, as the preferred destination for sports, I always say, is quick to take the driver's seat in ensuring that there is maximal benefits derived from hosting national events of this nature.
I love it. As an organizer, as an official that is now working internally, with what you've seen, do you think the National Youth Games have the quality to redefine sports in Nigeria?
It does have. What it does need, like the Honorable Minister of Sport Development did say today in his speech, Mr. President declared it open. He represented Mr. President. But what I think the federal government is doing now, which they should really be doing earlier than this point, was to actually have a national conversation in terms of the national youth sports policy. Some countries do have this globally. You widely traveled, and as a veteran too, you understand that when we talk about these things, we try to research as to what other countries are doing. Now, the global conversation has been that if you are to develop sports and you are to use sports as an economic enabler, you must go back to the formative processes and see if your systems and processes are in line with national vision, national development. So what this does is that it's about time that the federal government can now bring governors through the Nigerian Governors Forum, the National Assembly, and now have a holistic national sports policy. We've always had stories of, okay, there is one in the National Assembly, we don't see the light of day. But again, this time around, we are advocating, I am advocating, that there should be a national conversation on having a holistic national sports policy. Now, this is where the problem will be. We just came back from the Olympics. The Olympics now, you know the story, we came medalist. Now, thank God for Paralympics, we got some medals. But we shouldn't have waited for this time. The conversation should have started many years ago, where you have athletes, young athletes discovered from your primary school, your secondary school, into your polytechnics or your universities. Now, what happens at that point is you will now have what you call a developmental plan from junior, intermediate to elite level. Now you have what you call a support plan, where, because some of them are indigent, you now, how do we use our sports trust fund to now support these athletes? Now, some of them, they drop out of school because not enough support. How do you use that sports trust fund to provide support? So what Delta State is doing, which other states I think should copy from, is that Delta State has taken the lead role in developing a holistic approach for community sport development, and that's why His Excellency the Governor has taken the bull by horn to say, listen, we don't stop here. Do you know we are already putting in place a database at the end of the National Youth Games or internally what we organize here? We hand over these documents, this blueprint, this database to the Federal Ministry of Sport to say, you know what? We've got more Favor Ophilis here. We've got more Ella Rapobena here. We've got more Temitoba additional here. We can hand this over to you, and we still support them because they are our own.
You know what? I think the LOC did a great job sending you to come talk about this. You've done a good job, particularly talking about progression. I'll just hand you over to Cecilia. Thank you.
Yeah, all right, Harrison, thank you so much for joining us on the program tonight. Obviously, the Youth Games is still on. Many started today, so we'll continue to talk about it. And of course, when it's all over, we'll see the gains of it and how many of the athletes. Let's see if Delta will win again, because I know Delta usually hosts and they also want to win. And I love the fact that there's already a process for Delta State. Hopefully, as you mentioned, other states can actually emulate them and have a viable sports industry in the country. Harrison Ocholo, thank you so much for taking our time to join us tonight on the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and enjoy your evening.
Thank you. All right. Delapo, I mean, you've heard a lot. I mean, this is the stage. I mean, this is where we say, if we can get it right here, after getting it right, what is the process? I mean, after now, what next? And I love what he said about Delta State, and it's promising, really.
Yes, from what he said, I think Delta State is hosting to win because they're prepared to host people and prepared to win as well. I like what he said about developmental programs or policies, but I think Nigeria had it right from time. It's just because we don't hold people accountable. I remember that there used to be Headmasters Cup, Governor's Cup, and the process goes on and on. Principals Cup. Yes, you can imagine. We had all these processes, so where is the missing link? But I'm glad that some things are coming up, and this National Youth Games, all the problems that surfaced in 2023, you talked about poor officiating. That was a major gap last year, where they said some people were just called like impromptu to just stand in as officials. And the knowledge of the game was a big gap as well. When you don't know the game you're officiating, you'll be making the wrong calls. And another thing he mentioned is that accommodation issue has been sorted. So we're hoping that we're going to see the pictures that surfaced online last year. They were not just good at all.
I'm sure that's why they had to do something better. Let's take a listen to the sports minister who was talking during the opening ceremony of the game.
Is devoted to talent and talent nurturing. There is no better way to do our sports than to concentrate on grassroots sports development, which the National Youth Games represents. And there is also no better time for this game to go than coming immediately after the Olympics and the Paralympics. Everybody knows that for the 2024 Olympics, the outcome was a fiasco to Nigeria. And therefore, I think that this National Youth Games coming immediately after this, even though the Olympic Games did better for our country, I think that we must have